Imagine being the absolute greatest military commander your utopian civilization has ever produced.
Right. The absolute golden child.
Exactly. You are the spearhead of this incredibly optimistic, highly regimented empire, and you're sent out into the void to basically bring order to the galaxy.
Yeah, with the best technology, the finest ships, all of it.
All of it. You have this unwavering belief in your society's manifest destiny. But then, instead of this glorious conquest, you find a truth out there in the dark that is just so fundamentally horrifying.
Oh, totally world-breaking.
Right, so world-breaking that you completely sever all ties with your homeland, you paint your army's pristine armor blood red, you retreat to the fringes of known space, and you pick up an alien vampire sword just to survive.
I mean, it is the ultimate systemic collapse. We are looking at a scenario where a hyper-rational, technologically supreme society just runs headfirst into the irrational nightmare reality of the galaxy. And the resulting trauma literally splinters their civilization. What's fascinating here is that this isn't just a political disagreement, you know? It's a terrifying testament to what happens when the most decorated hero of a civilization discovers a horrifying truth and realizes the establishment's rigid doctrines are completely inadequate to stop it.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking the massive, violent schism within the Tau Empire. We're specifically focusing on the psychological and structural anatomy of the Farsight Enclave.
Yeah, it's a huge shift.
It really is.
Yeah.
We are tracking how a hopeful, collectivist empire accidentally birthed its own pragmatic, heavily militarized dark mirror.
And we're doing this by looking at the man at the very center of it all, Commander Farsight.
Right, and to really grasp the magnitude of Farsight's rebellion, we kind of have to establish what he was rebelling against in the first place.
Definitely.
So, the Tau Empire operates on this philosophy called the Greater Good, or the Taufa. It is a strict, caste-based society overseen by a ruling class called the Ethereals.
And they are, like, super controlling, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. The Ethereals maintain absolute, unquestioned control over all the castes. You have the Fire caste who fight, the Earth caste who build, the Water caste who negotiate, and the Air caste who pilot.
Right, and it's not just a political alignment.
No, not at all.
The Ethereals exert a level of control that borders on the biological. I mean, when an Ethereal speaks, a Tau obeys. It's ingrained. So for someone of Farsight's stature to break that conditioning, we aren't just talking about a disagreement over tax policy or border expansion.
Yeah, it's unprecedented.
Exactly. Farsight, or Chasoviola Shovakai Montir, to use his full title, was the absolute apex of the Fire caste. He was the greatest student of Commander Puritide.
The living embodiment of a Tau military ideal.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this for a second because we need an analogy.
Yeah.
Imagine a decorated, loyal, five-star general who is the absolute poster child for their nation's military doctrine.
Okay, I'm with you.
They go on a classified mission, see something so utterly world-breaking that they just refuse to come home and instead build a fortress in the wilderness.
Yeah, because he was the undisputed master of the Monka, and we really need to dissect what the Monka actually is because it defines literally everything Farsight does later.
Right. The Tau have two main philosophies for war.
Exactly. The Kauyon, which is the patient hunter, that's all about luring the enemy into a trap, and then there's the Monka, the killing blow.
The killing blow. It sounds so aggressive.
It is incredibly aggressive. Monka is about identifying the enemy's critical weak point, like their command structure or their vital supply lines.
Yeah.
And then delivering an overwhelming, decisive strike that just ends the conflict immediately. It requires this crazy level of aggression, spatial awareness, and decisive action. And Farsight just possessed that in unparalleled measure.
I mean, he's the guy who looks at a grinding, multi-front war of attrition and basically says, nah, I'm just going to drop 1,000 battlesuits directly on their command bunker, cut off the head, and be home in time for dinner.
Precisely. And that tactical brilliance is exactly why the Ethereals chose him to lead the expeditionary force in the aftermath of the Damocles Crusade.
Right, the Damocles Crusade was a huge wake-up call for the Tau.
Oh, massive. The Tau Empire had just experienced its first truly bloody, grinding conflict with the Imperium of Man. Before this, the Tau were expanding, just assuming the galaxy was theirs for the taking.
And then they slammed right into the brutal, mechanized meat grinder, the Imperial war machine.
Yeah, it was a harsh reality check. The Ethereals desperately needed a victory to stabilize morale and reclaim lost territory, so they needed their golden boy.
So they point Farsight at the Damocles Gulf, which is this region of space that is notoriously difficult to navigate, and they tell him to go secure the borders.
But almost immediately, the mission parameters change.
Because he doesn't just find remnants of the Imperium out there, right?
He runs right into an orc
Yeah.
led by a particularly cunning war boss. And the orc threat just completely derails the expedition.
For those who don't know, orcs are they're a nightmare to fight.
Utter nightmare. They are a massive, brutal, fungal alien species that thrives entirely on warfare. They don't have supply lines in any traditional sense.
Right, you can't just cut off their food or ammo.
Exactly. And they don't have a centralized command that you can easily cripple. They are just chaos incarnate. So Farsight, employing his Montco philosophy, realizes he cannot just defend Tau space.
He has to exterminate the threat at its root.
Yes, he pursues the orcs deep into uncharted space, like way beyond the sensor networks and supply chains of the Tau Empire, pushing his expeditionary force to the absolute limit.
Which feels like a classic military overextension, you know?
Oh, textbook overextension.
The supply lines are stretched so thin the troops are completely exhausted, but Farsight is just driven by this intense need to deliver that killing blow.
And this obsessive pursuit leads his fleet to a desolate, cursed rock at the edge of the map, a planet called Arthas Moloch.
And Arthas Moloch is really where everything falls apart.
It is the crucible of the entire schism. When Farsight's forces make planetfall to hunt down that orc war boss, they find ruins that predate any known civilization.
Like weird hexagonal architecture.
Yeah, bizarre monoliths, an environment that just defies standard geological logic. And it's here, amid these ruins, that the fundamental pillars of the Tau worldview are completely demolished.
Because it's not just orcs down there.
Not at all.
The records indicate that something else was woken up during the fighting. All that bloodshed actually triggers a localized reality, Terra Warp Rift.
And we really have to look at the mechanics of how the Tau perceive reality to understand why this was so devastating for them.
Right, they are very science-focused.
Hyper-rational. The Tau are an incredibly young species, and they have almost zero psychic presence. They don't use the warp for travel the way the Imperium does.
Their technology is entirely grounded in material physics, right?
Yeah.
Electromagnetism, plasma, gravity manipulation.
Exactly. When they scan a battlefield, they are looking for heat signatures, mass, radio frequencies.
So when literal demons from the warp spill out of a tear in reality on Arthas Moloch, the Tau sensors just fail.
They register absolutely nothing. I want you to imagine looking at a horrifying, blood-soaked monstrosity tearing apart your infantry line, and your advanced targeting telemetry tells you that you are looking at empty space.
That is terrifying.
It's beyond terrifying. Demons do not obey the laws of thermodynamics. They don't have a biological anatomy that you can critically wound. They are sentient nightmare energy made manifest.
So Farsight's entire strategic foundation, the Monka, this precise application of overwhelming force to a rational enemy's weak point, it becomes totally useless.
Completely useless. How do you deliver a killing blow to an enemy that shouldn't exist, has no biology, and is literally feeding on the panic of your troops?
I mean, it's like realizing the ship you've been sailing isn't actually navigating an ocean, but it's in the stomach of a Leviathan.
Wow.
You don't try to steer the ship in it, you start building a harpoon. The tactical doctrine has to shift instantly from a precision military strike to just pure existential survival.
And the most horrifying part of the Arthas Moloch incident isn't just the demons themselves, it's what actually happens to the ethereals accompanying the expedition.
Right, they don't make it.
No. During the chaotic extraction, all of the ethereals attached to Farsight's forces are killed. And this is a vital, mechanistic turning point for the whole society.
Because for the first time in his life.
Yeah, and for the first time in the lives of his entire army, the psychic, pheromonal control of the ethereal caste is suddenly just gone.
Oof. Cut off.
They are completely cut off from the guiding hand of their utopia.
And when the smoke clears and they've barely managed to survive and push back this demonic incursion, Farsight has this moment of absolute clarity.
A very dark clarity.
Yeah. He looks at the universe, he looks at what almost slaughtered his people, and he realizes that the ethereals, sitting back in their pristine, glass-towered cities, are completely ignorant.
Willfully ignorant, almost.
Exactly. They have been preaching this optimistic doctrine of the greater good to an army that just fought literal hellspawn.
And he realizes the ethereal's worldview is not just naive, it is a profound liability. Farsight didn't just rebel for power. He rebelled because he saw the truth about the universe's horrors and just couldn't unsee it.
Oh, right.
If the Tao Empire continues to expand blindly, believing they can negotiate with or rationally conquer anything they meet, they will eventually stumble into horrors that will consume their entire species.
So when the Ethereal Council eventually manages to reestablish contact and orders him to return home, his refusal is like, it's a philosophical amputation.
That's a great way to put it.
He essentially says, we aren't coming back, and honestly, you don't want us to. And he establishes the Farsight enclaves out across the Damocles Gulf.
He creates a heavily fortified, totally independent state.
Right, and because his worldview has been so thoroughly shattered, the very way his new society fights, builds, and lives has to undergo a massive ideological inversion.
It has to. You can't fight nightmares with the same sanitized rulebook you use back home.
Exactly. So how does he restructure everything?
Well, the structural changes within the enclaves are just fascinating from a logistical standpoint. Cut off from the Empire, the Fire Caste, which is just the military, suddenly has to take on administrative and societal leadership.
Which is total heresy in standard Tao culture. Right. The Fire Caste is only supposed to fight.
Exactly. Standard Tao culture strictly forbids castes from mixing duties. But Farsight relies heavily on the Earth caste engineers within his ranks to build a self-sustaining infrastructure.
They have to build a whole civilization from scratch.
Yeah. They create a society based on merit, individual achievement, and martial prowess, completely discarding the rigid collective subservience that the Ethereals demanded.
And we see this rebellion physically painted onto their battle suits, don't we?
We do. Farsight is from Viorla, which is a world known for its hot-blooded warriors. Traditionally, they wear pure white armor with red markings.
Very clean, very pristine.
Very clean. But the Enclaves invert this completely. They paint their armor dark crimson with bone-white accents.
It's a very visual, deliberate middle finger to the concept of ethereal purity.
Oh, absolutely. They are loudly broadcasting that they have walked through the fire and they are no longer clean.
But the most radical shift isn't just their armor colors, it's their tactical doctrine.
Yes.
The main Tao Empire fights a very sanitized war. They prefer standoff tactics, utilizing superior range, railguns, and guided missiles to destroy targets before they ever get close.
It reflects a cultural desire to hold the chaotic universe at arm's length. Keep it away from us.
But Farsight abandons this entirely. He leans heavily into aggressive, close-quarters combat. And I want to dig into that because on the surface, taking an army famous for its advanced sniper tech and forcing them to fight in close combat sounds insane.
It really does sound counterintuitive.
Right, like, is this actually a viable military strategy, or is it just a massive trauma response to what he saw on Arthas Moloch? Like, did fighting those demons instill this obsessive, desperate need to look the enemy in the eye and hack them apart just to prove to themselves that the nightmare can be physically killed?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is inextricably both. Psychologically, you are absolutely correct.
Okay.
When you face an enemy that totally defies logic, standing back and firing pulse rounds into the void while your lines are slaughtered, it just induces mass panic.
Right, because you can't even see what you're hitting.
Exactly. You need the visceral grounding reality of close quarters annihilation to anchor your troops. You need to see the physical impact of your weapons, but tactically there is a brutal logic to it as well.
How so?
When fighting orcs or warp entities, standard ranged attrition often fails. They close the distance way too fast, or they literally manifest inside your ranks out of thin air.
Right, you can't snipe something that L-poots behind you.
Exactly. So Farsight realized that if the enemy is going to get into melee range, regardless of what he does, his forces must be the ones initiating that contact on their own terms.
Right, so if a blood-crazed alien berserker is going to charge you, you don't just sit there and wait for him to hit your lines.
No, you drop a massive, heavily armored battlesuit directly on his head from orbit.
Yes. The Enclaves perfect the mass drop assault. They use these immense manta transports to deliver entire cadres of crisis battlesuits directly into the heart of the enemy formation.
And their core operational tenets, their specific SEP tenets, actively incentivize closing the distance. The Tao Empire's long-range combat reflects their desire for clean, controlled, dogmatic warfare.
But Farsight's close combat is messy.
Messy, decisive, and overwhelming. It's a direct reflection of his realization that the universe is brutal, and it requires a brutal, hands-on response.
But, to fight this completely new type of war, they need a completely new type of arsenal.
Oh, absolutely. One the rigid empire would consider absolute heresy.
Right, you can't just take a long-range plasma rifle and start swinging it like a baseball.
No, you need dedicated melee weapons.
And this is where the survivalist ingenuity of the Enclaves really shines. Because they are completely cut off from the main empire's research and development, they have to innovate on the fly.
And in the Tau Empire, unauthorized innovation is deeply illegal.
Right, it is literally considered tech heresy.
The Ethereals strictly control the flow of technology to ensure societal stability. Progress is kept slow, measured, and sanitized. But out in the Enclaves, the Earthcast engineers are operating without any of those constraints.
Specifically, this brilliant mind named Ovesa, right?
Yes, Ovesa. He is one of Farsight's closest allies and one of the most brilliant Earthcast minds alive. He and his team are building the tools of the desperate.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the engineering here is just wild. Let's break down some of these heretical weapons. First, you have the Onager Gauntlet.
The Onager Gauntlet is incredible.
Our sources detail this as a massive, heavily armored, power-assisted fist mounted on a crisis battlesuit. It is designed quite literally to let a Tau pilot punch through heavily armored tanks or dreadnoughts or massive alien beasts.
And to understand why this is considered heresy, you have to look at the mechanics of the weapon and the culture it totally rejects.
Okay, lay it on me.
The Onager Gauntlet requires a massive rerouting of a battlesuit's power core just to generate the kinetic force and the structural integrity needed to survive the impact.
So it's pulling power away from shields or guns.
Exactly. Tau engineering usually prioritizes energy projection and magnetic rails. Building a servo-driven, blunt-force kinetic impact weapon is seen as primitive and barbaric by the Empire.
Because it requires the pilot to abandon the safety of distance.
Right. It forces them to engage in the messy, brutal reality of physical destruction.
It's the ultimate admission that sometimes all your advanced philosophy and long-range sensors fail, and you just need to punch the nightmare as hard as you physically can.
Exactly. It's practical survival.
And then they have the fusion blade. This one fascinates me because it's taking an existing weapon and breaking it on purpose to make it better for melee.
Yeah, the Fusion Blaster is traditionally a short-range anti-armor weapon. It uses magnetic containment fields to project a localized blast of superheated matter.
Like a really powerful plasma shotgun.
Basically, yeah. But Ovesa and the Earthcast engineers in the Enclaves figured out how to intentionally destabilize and then restructure those magnetic containment fields.
Which sounds incredibly dangerous.
Oh, it is. Instead of projecting the fusion reaction outward as a blast, they trap it in an elongated, sustained loop. They create a cohesive blade of pure, superheated plasma.
A literal lightsaber built out of a broken tank gun. It's brilliant, but if that magnetic field flickers for even a second, the weapon could just detonate in the pilot's hands, right?
The risk is immense. A catastrophic malfunction is entirely possible at any moment, and that underscores the desperation of the Enclaves. They are willing to accept those kinds of malfunction rates if it gives them the edge they desperately need in close combat.
The main empire would never authorize a weapon with that kind of safety profile.
Never. The Ethereals would shut it down immediately. But the Enclaves are fighting for their very existence every single day.
They also developed something called the seismic fibrillator node, right?
Yes, that's another brilliant adaptation. It's a device that weaponizes the Earthcast's terraforming technology.
Terraforming tech used for war.
Exactly. It creates localized, devastating tectonic tremors. They are literally turning the Earth itself into a weapon to destabilize massive enemy formations right before a close-quarters assault.
So they were using industrial mining equipment to trigger localized earthquakes underneath their enemies.
Total, unrestricted warfare. They use whatever works, regardless of tradition.
But as incredibly advanced and pragmatic as these Earthcast inventions are, we cannot talk about Farsight's survival without looking at what's actually keeping him alive.
Right.
Because his personal weapon isn't a repurposed fusion blaster or a mechanical power fist. It's something he found in the dirt on Arthas Moloch, and it completely defies all Tau science.
We have to discuss the Dawn Blade.
This is where the story shifts from a pragmatic military rebellion to a deeply tragic Gothic horror. The Dawn Blade is an ancient Xenos artifact, a sword forged from materials that predate the Imperium of Man.
Very old, very dark magic.
Yeah. Farsight picked it up during that chaotic, desperate fight against the demons on Arthas Moloch. He just needed a weapon and grabbed it, and he used it to carve his way out. But the mechanics of this sword are what make it so terrifying.
The Dawn Blade possesses chronophagic properties.
Wait, meaning it literally eats time.
It literally eats time. When
Man.
Farsight strikes down an enemy with the Dawn Blade, the weapon siphons the remaining natural lifespan of that victim.
Oh, wow.
It drains their life essence and transfers that temporal energy directly into Farsight himself.
A chronophagy vampire sword.
Yeah.
I mean, the tall would naturally have very short lifespans, right?
Very short. Biologically, they only live around 40, maybe 50 years.
But Farsight has been leading his enclaves for over 3 centuries.
Yes.
He is unnaturally, impossibly old for his species. And the only reason he is still alive is because he has been murdering his way through the galaxy, harvesting the lifespans of orcs, humans, and whatever else he fights.
And here is the psychological crux of his character arc. Farsight is hyper-rational. He is a genius tactical commander. It took him a long time to realize what the sword was actually doing.
Because he doesn't understand magic.
Right. Initially, he just thought he was incredibly resilient or lucky. But once he understood the chronophagic mechanics, once he realized he was stealing lives to prolong his own, the guilt began to compound immensely.
I have to point out the staggering hypocrisy here, though. Wait, so Farsight breaks away from the Tau Empire because he realizes the universe is filled with irrational, soul-destroying horrors.
Correct.
He rejects the ethereals because he wants to fight the corrupting influence of the Wark with clear-eyed pragmatism. Yet, his own weapon, the primary tool keeping the leader of this rational rebellion alive, is a vampiric, life-draining ancient sword that is intrinsically tied to the very horrors he is fighting against.
This raises an important question, doesn't it? Does the end justify the means?
He is fighting monsters using a monster's tool.
It is the ultimate moral compromise, and that compromise extends beyond just Farsight himself. It infects the highest echelons of his command structure. We have to look at the 8.
Right. Farsight's inner circle.
Yes, his most trusted generals, an elite war council of unparalleled battlesuit pilots. But the makeup of the 8 is a testament to Farsight's absolute inability to let go of the past, and his willingness to break every societal taboo to maintain his military edge.
Because, cruelly, some of them aren't even alive anymore.
Exactly. Take Commander Bravestorm, for example.
Okay.
He was grievously mortally wounded decades ago. Now, in the main empire, he would have been honored for his sacrifice and allowed to die peacefully.
Right.
In the Enclaves, his broken, ruined body is permanently sealed inside his battlesuit. He is kept alive by advanced, agonizing life support systems, essentially transforming his suit into a walking sarcophagus.
It's basically a dreadnought. He's a corpse wired into a war machine.
And it gets even darker when you look at Oblotai 9 Azu.
Oh, man, Oblotai.
Oblotai is perhaps the most egregious violation of Tau doctrine in the entire enclaves. Artificial intelligence, true sentient AI that perfectly mimics a specific individual, is highly, highly restricted in the main empire.
Because AI is dangerous.
Extremely. But Oblotai was one of Farsight's oldest mentors. He was a brilliant broadside battlesuit pilot. When Oblotai died, Ovesa, the Earthcast engineer we talked about earlier, took Oblotai's neural engrams.
Like the digitized mapping of his brain.
Exactly. His memories, his personality, all of it. And Ovesa uploaded them into an AI core within a battlesuit.
So his inner circle is partially made up of literal ghosts trapped in machines. He made a digital ghost.
Farsight is literally taking counsel from an algorithm that thinks it's his dead teacher. It is incredibly macabre.
It really is. He has anchored his leadership to a vampire sword, a walking coffin, and a digital ghost. He rejected the ethereal's clean, sanitized control, only to build himself a high-tech haunted house.
It shows how the pursuit of righteous independence can lead to isolating, macabre extremes. This is the tragic consequence of absolute knowledge in the 40K universe.
Right.
The sources frame the Farsight enclaves as the embodiment of a terrifying truth. That even the noblest cause, driven by the desire for freedom and clear-sightedness, inevitably leads to corruption and isolation when the fundamental truth of the universe is inherently hostile.
So what does this all mean? I mean, pulling all these threads together for you listening, we started with a hero, right? We watched him break on Arthas Moloch. We watched him change his army's colors and tactics, completely invert his culture.
Yeah.
We watched him invent heretical, incredibly dangerous weapons just to survive. And finally, we watched him wield a soul-stealing sword and surround himself with the dead.
Farsight learned the harsh truth about the warp, about the demons, and about the fragility of his species. But look at what that knowledge actually cost him.
Everything.
He is the only Tau who truly understands the stakes. He is carrying the entire existential weight of his species' survival on his shoulders entirely alone.
because he can't go back.
Never. He fights a desperate, endless war against incomprehensible enemies, knowing full well that his former brothers and sisters in the main empire would execute him as a traitor if they ever caught him.
And he is slowly being consumed by the Dawn Blade. Every time he swings it to save his people, he is tethering his soul further to a dark, ancient mechanism he cannot fully comprehend.
Exactly. Which brings us to the final line of the source material. The ultimate horror here isn't the bloodletters on Arthas Moloch.
No.
And it isn't the mind control of the ethereals. The ultimate horror is that Farsight might have been right all along.
He might be the only sane man in an empire of the blind.
Yes, but possessing that sanity, having that completely accurate view of the universe, has cursed him. He is the only one who sees the truth, but that truth has doomed him to an eternity of lonely, desperate warfare.
Being right didn't save him.
Not at all. He's slowly being consumed by the very tool keeping him alive, surrounded by the ghosts of his friends. It is a devastating analysis of the cost of enlightenment. If the truth is madness, then clarity is a curse.
Which perfectly sets up the ultimate tragic irony of the Farsight enclaves. And it brings us to the takeaway for everyone listening. When you strip away the battle suits, the aliens, and the plasma swords, what we are really looking at is the anatomy of a shattered paradigm.
Right.
We all have moments where a fundamental belief is just upended. You learn a harsh truth about a system you trusted, an organization you devoted yourself to, or a leader you followed. The comforting illusion drops.
The question then becomes one of adaptation. When you learn something that shatters your worldview, how do you adapt without letting that new reality consume you entirely?
Like the Dawn Blade consumes Farsight.
Exactly. Do you have the structural resilience to integrate that new, horrifying data without losing your core identity? Farsight survived the revelation, but his survival required him to fundamentally compromise the very ideals he was trying to protect.
And so, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder long after this deep dive ends. Think about the two factions we've explored today. On one side, you have the main Tau Empire. Peaceful, ordered, largely happy, but completely blind to the nightmares lurking just beyond their borders.
Living in a fragile bubble that could burst at any moment.
Right. And on the other side, you have Commander Farsight. Eyes wide open, completely aware of the truth, but utterly alone.
If knowing the ultimate truth requires you to isolate yourself, abandon your society, and wield a weapon that slowly destroys your humanity, is it better to live in comfortable, dogmatic ignorance?
Who is truly worse off? The blissfully blind Tau Empire or the all-seeing damned Commander Farsight?
It's a heavy question.
It really is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Crimson Schism, leaving you to mull over the cost of forbidden knowledge. Until next time, keep digging deeper.